Welcome back. If you are new here, this is where we read the stories people are almost too afraid to tell out loud. My name is Lynn. I was 40 years old when the events I am about to describe took place. 40, which is supposed to be the age when a woman finally has herself figured out, when the impulsive decisions of her 20s are behind her, when she knows who she is and what she wants and how to make choices that do not blow her life apart. That is what 40 is supposed to look like. My 40 looked nothing like that. I want to be honest with you from the start because this story does not work unless I am. I was married to a man I genuinely loved. Past tense is not the right framing. I still loved him during everything I am about to tell you. I know how that sounds. I know it does not make logical sense. But if you have ever loved someone and still made choices that contradicted everything that love was supposed to mean, then maybe some part of this will feel familiar. Not right, not justified, just familiar. My husband traveled for work. Regularly, predictably, 2 weeks out of every 3 months, he was on a plane to Asia. And when he was gone, I made choices. I had been making those choices for years before any of this happened. I am not going to dress that up or soften it. I was unfaithful, serially unfaithful. And for a long time, I convinced myself I had it completely under control. We lived in a wealthy suburb west of Chicago. The kind of neighborhood where the homes are all custom built and the homeowners association has opinions about your mailbox. The kind of place where everyone knows just enough about everyone else to keep things interesting. And honestly, I thought everything was fine. I really did. But there are moments in a life when you realize that the story you have been telling yourself about who you are is not actually the full story. Those moments rarely announce themselves. Usually they arrive wearing the face of something that looks almost ordinary. A phone call, a drink with a friend, a decision you make without fully understanding what you are deciding. Mine arrived wearing the face of Gina. Gina had moved into one of the townhouses in our neighborhood a few years before all of this happened. She was tall and striking and completely unbothered by what anyone thought of her, which in a neighborhood like ours made her either magnetic or threatening depending on who you asked. The older women in the community had theories about her money, about her past, about the kind of woman she must be to live the way she did without apparent apology. I thought those theories said more about the women making them than they did about Gina. I became her closest friend in the neighborhood, maybe the only real one, and somewhere along the way our friendship became something more than friendship. I am not going to over-explain that. We were close in a way that included physical closeness, and we both understood that it was not exclusive and not the center of either of our lives. It was honest in its own strange way. We told each other things, we laughed together. I trusted her in a way I did not trust most people. Looking back now, I should have been paying closer attention to the things I did not know about her. I knew her surface. I knew her warmth and her humor and the way she made any room feel more alive. What I did not know, not yet, was the full shape of her life. That detail matters. Remember it. She invited me over one afternoon. Nothing unusual about that. We did it regularly. She asked me to come over dressed. She said she had drinks waiting. I did my hair and my makeup. I was in a good mood. My husband was traveling and the afternoon felt open and light and uncomplicated. I let myself in and called out for her. She called back from the kitchen, told me to just come through, so I walked in, and I stopped. Sitting on her couch was a man I had never seen before, late 20s, dark hair, blue eyes, built in a way that suggested he took his physical condition seriously. He was not what stopped me exactly. What stopped me was everything else about the scene, the ease of it. The way Gina appeared from the kitchen grinning like she had just pulled off something she had been planning for days. The way the man on the couch was watching me with a kind of calm amusement, completely relaxed, like he had been expecting me. I felt the full weight of what was happening before I could articulate it. The grin on Gina's face, the setup, the drink she pressed into my hand like a prop. This was not a spontaneous afternoon. This had been arranged. I had been arranged. I want you to understand what happened in the next few seconds because it matters to everything that follows. Part of me wanted to pull back. Part of me was genuinely unnerved. But there was another part, a part I had been feeding and indulging for years that responded to the situation with something much closer to interest than alarm. And that part was louder. Gina stepped close and whispered something. She called it a bet. She had apparently told this man something about me, made a wager, and was now expecting me to make good on it. I understood in that moment that I had been the subject of a conversation I had not been present for, that she had described me to him, that he had formed expectations. I should have been angry. In another version of my life, maybe I was, but I was not. I was standing in her living room trying to keep my hands steady around my drink, and underneath the discomfort was something I recognized, something I had been chasing in different forms for years. And then it happened. I moved toward him. I am not going to pretend that what followed was something that happened to me. I made choices in those hours, active, present choices. The night unfolded in a way I had not planned and had not imagined 24 hours earlier, but I was not passive. I was there. I was fully, embarrassingly, undeniably there. When morning came, I was different in some way I could not yet name, not ruined, not ashamed, something more complicated than either of those things. Gina watched me the way she sometimes did when she thought she had understood something about me that I had not yet understood about myself. In the weeks that followed, she introduced me to others. Small gatherings, evenings that existed in a separate compartment from my regular life. My husband traveled. I lived my hidden parallel existence. I told myself this was sustainable. I told myself I had control. That was the moment everything changed. I just did not know it yet. My husband left for a 2-week trip. Gina and I went to a party downtown. It was the kind of evening that starts beautifully and then tilts, almost imperceptibly at first, into something you cannot quite correct. There were men there playing poker. I had been drinking. Not blackout drinking, not I cannot remember drinking, just enough to feel like the rules that normally governed my decision-making were optional. They let me into the game. I want to sit with that for a moment because it is important. They let me into the game. That sentence sounds innocent. It was not. I did not fully register what I was agreeing to until I was already inside it. The stakes were real. The men were not the friendly social gamblers I had been imagining, and my luck was catastrophic. $20,000. I sat there looking at a number that represented the end of everything if my husband ever found out. Our finances were shared. Our life was shared. There was no version of this debt that stayed hidden. There was no credit card I could quietly run up, no savings I could quietly drain. $20,000 to men who were not the kind of people you could ask for an extension. Gina had left earlier in the evening. I had refused to go with her. The weight of that refusal sat on me like a physical thing. I agreed to spend a night with the man I owed the money to. That is the only way I know how to say it plainly. I bought myself 2 weeks to find the money. It was transactional and humiliating, and also in some dark corner of myself I was not proud of, not entirely without its own complicated pull. That last part is the hardest thing to admit. That even in a moment of genuine fear and desperation, there was something in me that was not only afraid. I went to Gina. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, and then I saw a look move across her face, a decision being made, a door opening. She asked me a question I was not expecting. She asked me if I would be willing to be filmed. My immediate internal response was horror, pure reflex horror, and then almost instantaneously something else. Something that made my knees weak and my mind go very, very quiet. I nodded yes before I had fully processed what I was agreeing to, and then Gina told me what she actually did for a living. She was not a divorcee living quietly off a settlement. She was a working professional in an industry that the neighborhood would have discussed for years if they had known. She was successful at it. She was businesslike about it. She explained the plan with the same calm practicality she brought to everything. A studio, a director she knew, a contract, 4 films, $5,000 each, $20,000 total. I heard myself ask how soon. 2 days later, I was in downtown Chicago, wearing an outfit Gina had selected, standing outside a building that looked completely ordinary from the street. And inside that building, under lights and in front of cameras, I made decisions that I had technically been moving toward for years without ever quite seeing the destination. The director was a man named Mr. Malone. He was not what you would picture, heavy balding, a ponytail that belonged to a different decade, but he was professional. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he knew exactly what I was. He saw through whatever composure I had assembled for the walk across town. He saw the person underneath the composed suburban exterior, and he knew how to use that. I signed a contract, 4 films. It covered my debt. There was an additional complication, a fee for the payment arrangement with the man I owed money to, $2,000 up front. And Mr. Malone had a solution for that too. A meeting with an investor, an evening, $2,000. I understood what he was actually saying, and instead of walking out, I looked at Gina, who winked at me, and I said yes. At some point during the makeup session afterward, it all landed on me at once. What I had agreed to, what I had done, what was going to happen. I sat in that chair looking at my reflection and waiting for the wave of regret or panic that I was certain was coming. It did not come. What came instead was a kind of clarity. Not pride, not exactly. Not shame either. Something stranger. A recognition that I had been moving toward this version of myself for a long time, and that the woman I had been performing as the composed neighbor, the devoted wife, the woman who had everything under control, had always been only part of the story. Mr. Malone had come up with a name for me, Lynn the Trophy MILF. It should have been insulting. It was not entirely wrong. I sat with that for a long time. The harder thing to sit with was Gina. On the way out, I asked her directly, looking her in the eyes, whether she had set me up. Not the poker game, not the debt, but all of it. The years of it. The careful cultivation of exactly the person who would end up in that makeup chair. She looked at me and she said with what appeared to be complete sincerity that she had never done a single thing to make me do anything I did not want to do deep down. That I was a natural, that she had always known. I did not know whether to believe her. I still do not know entirely. And I think that uncertainty is the most honest thing I can offer you. I want to give you an update, because a lot has changed since the events I have just described. I fulfilled the contract. All 4 films. My debt was paid. My husband returned from Asia and walked back into a life that looked identical on the surface to the one he had left. He does not know. To my knowledge, he has never encountered any evidence of what happened. Whether that constitutes luck or deception or both, I leave to you. My friendship with Gina changed after all of this. It did not end, but it became something different, more knowing. There is a specific kind of relationship that exists between 2 people who have seen each other at the edges of themselves. We have that now. It is complicated. Most real things are. I still live in the same neighborhood. I still see the same women who had theories about Gina's money and her past. I smile at them at community events. I bring food to the potlucks. I am, on the surface, exactly who I always appeared to be. Underneath that surface is a woman I am still figuring out. A woman who made choices that most people in my life would not recognize as mine. A woman who, if she is being fully honest, does not entirely regret them. That is the part I cannot reconcile neatly. That is the part I return to. So I have to ask you, if someone makes choices that harm no one except potentially themselves, choices that come from a part of themselves they may not fully understand, are those choices a betrayal of who they are? Or are they the most honest expression of who they actually are? Because I still think about it. I have turned it over from every angle I can imagine. And I genuinely do not know if the woman who walked into Gina's apartment that afternoon and the woman who signed that contract 2 days later were making mistakes, or simply finally being truthful. Leave your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more stories like this, you already know what to do.